Just giving it a second because there's a little bit of a delay here. For today, what I wanted to share is something that I actually emailed this today to my email list. So if you're not on the email list, you should definitely get on there because that's where all the juicy shit happens. But this theme has been emerging lately. I'm gonna have to wear my glasses. This theme has been emerging lately on fears of commitment, and I wanted to just dive into this before I have to go in a little bit. I have a class, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on this because I did a flash sale last week for intuitive reading. So I've gotten a chance to check in with a lot of you guys, and always, you know, the themes are going to arise pretty quickly. And so something that's been coming up a lot in conversation has been this like feeling like you're kind of in energetic limbo or like emotional limbo or afraid to make a big decision. And of course I'm talking mainly about relationship because obviously that's my main focus, right, with people, especially when it comes to deep intimacy, especially when it comes to conscious relationship or sacred union. This is definitely like a higher level of connecting and operating within a relationship dynamic. So it asks more of us, right? And so a really big pattern that I see happening is that it's almost like people are waiting for, and this used to be me, so I understand this. It's like you're waiting for the thing to arrive so that then you can show up the way that you want to show up. But what really ends up happening, and this is really important, you know, my main pillar in my business is devotion for a reason. If we're not clear, like about our intention, about the thing that we really desire, particularly when it comes to relationship, what ends up happening over and over again is that you are not attracting the thing that you really want. And you might start to tell yourself a story like, oh, this means that I can't have the thing I really want. Like, let's use an example. A lot of the people that I've worked with in the past were coming to me because they were in pursuit or attracting over and over again the same like unavailable person. It could be that the person was emotionally unavailable, that they weren't ready for a relationship, that they were already in a different relationship, and there was like a third party situation, or in some capacity, my client like wasn't feeling seen or fully chosen or fully honored in the way that their heart was really craving. And it's like they were waiting for the external situation to change to actually get clear in their body. And so of course nothing was clear. Do you know what I mean? Like things don't get clear from the outside and they get clear from the inside out, as within, so without. And so a big theme that I see when it comes especially to deep intimacy and conscious relationship is that it requires you to get really clear on your intention and hold that intention in your body and sustain it even when it doesn't appear right away. Even if you attract things that are kind of what you want, but it's almost like these are little tests of your devotion. How clear are you really? Do you need to refine your desire a little bit more? Do you need to refine your intention a little bit more? You know, we tend to get these like situations that are half in and half out because somewhere within ourselves, we're not 100% in. We're not all in. And and I'm going to tell you guys a little story here. So I studied Tibetan Buddhism with 3 Jewels in New York City. And I've been studying with them for a while now. And I'm on the verge of considering taking my first set of vows, Buddhist vows. And so this is an edge for me because, not just because it's a bit more intensive as far as the daily practice goes, and that's fine because I have a daily practice, but it's like you're taking it to the next level, right? And so my teacher told us a story about how when he was wanting to take his vows, and this was a long time ago, like 25 years ago, he said that initially he was really terrified. And so he was afraid that he wasn't going to do his vows perfectly. And so he didn't take them for 10 years. He waited. And there's nothing wrong with waiting, right? We don't want to rush anything in life, you know. However, what he said was, knowing what he knows now, he's like, I wish that I had made the vow and set that super clear intention and made that choice a decade ago, because it would have made my practice so much more powerful. It would have amplified his karma. Like, it would have made things so much stronger. And it's okay, you know, whatever, in hindsight. And so when it comes to relationships, right? So I'm on the verge of considering taking my first set of vows. And that looks like a few other sacrifices that I hadn't made before. And so it also means being sober. And I basically phased out substances. But anyways, my point is, in tying it back to this conversation, is that it's an edge. So I would have to choose that and then fully choose it, because he's like, well, I'm not interested in mentoring people that aren't all in. And I'm on board with that shit because I don't like dabbling either. I've never been that type of person. But I understand that when you're creating big changes, or when your heart has a really big ask, and it's like, you know that you have to energetically go all in before it shows up, it's going to test the parts of you that are trying to control it. That, like, for example, you decide that I teach sacred relationship, conscious relationship, sacred union. People come to me, they're like, I want a super powerful, I'll get back to the vow story, it's all connected. The power of a vow, the power of devotion. People come to me and they're like, I want this super powerful, amazing, conscious, healthy, loving, nourishing spiritual partnership. And I'm like, great. And my first question is always like, right? Like, what are the qualities that you're looking for, right? What are your values? What are the things you're deeply desiring in partnership? And then my second question is like, how are you truly embodying each of those things every day, like on a daily basis? How do you embody what it is that you desire? We can't attract it if we're not being it. And part of devotion is connected with your intention. If your intentions are clear and you actually fully devote yourself to something, you're not devoting yourself to like needing to know every detail of how it's going to happen and when it's going to happen. We've got to let that part go. We've got to surrender those logical control issues. But what we don't need to ignore is how we're showing up every day. So let's say we want a partner that's emotionally available, but we're attracting people who are not emotionally available. Like I said, maybe they ghost you when things get hard, or all of a sudden you're reaching the next level of your relationship and they're suddenly nowhere to be found. Or it's like you want to have a conversation about it and they don't. Or suddenly there's like a third party involved. Or maybe they're just, you know what I mean? It's like they feel like they're slipping through your fingertips. And so you're not clear, you're not actually on the same page. And you might stick around for that for a while. I know that I did in the past. And it was a huge lesson to learn, because that person is just mirroring back where you're at energetically and what your intentions are. If your intentions are unclear and you're internally not fully in to the thing that you desire, then you're going to get a lot of mixed messages. You're going to get a lot of this weird, confusing, muddy energy from people. And we can't blame them. I mean, we can, but that's it's a waste of time and energy. That's not how it works. It starts within us. And so what we have to ask ourselves is, how am I truly embodying the thing that I want? So when people come to me and they're like, I want this like fucking powerful relationship connection, it's going to ask more of you before it appears. And then when it appears, it's going to ask more of you day to day. Why do I want to take vows, my Buddhist vows? Because I know that these practices, the things that I'm learning, and again, I teach this in my relationship containers, because meditation and a daily practice is a non-negotiable for me, because I don't believe that you can be in this type of relationship, certainly the kind that I'm talking about, without some kind of spiritual practice. Or else I don't understand what people mean by conscious relationship or sacred relationship, right? Because for me, the relationship is also serving as a container to spiritually evolve within. And how the hell are we spiritually evolving if we don't have the discipline to have a practice where we go check in with ourselves and with Source, God, universe? And if we're not open to the divine, then to me, then it's not really like a conscious partnership in the way that I want to help people cultivate, right? So anyways, it's a niche for a reason. And so people want this like badass connection. And I'm like, all right, great. The way that we begin is by embodying those qualities every single day. So it's going to ask more of you. And it's not that it's like this impossible feat or that you have to be perfect. Something I talked about in my email today on this topic was that a lot of people are afraid to devote fully to something, not just because maybe it won't show up or they would have to face that, I don't know, maybe there's like a little bit of shame underneath, or it's like, oh, if it doesn't come right away in the form that I'm wanting it, or it's looking like it's not going to happen, then you start to lose hope and you feel like there's something wrong with you. Perfectionism is really sneaky, the way that it comes in this really like insidious way, as a way to sabotage, because there's a part of us that sometimes feels like we're not worthy of the thing that we desire if we're not perfect. But I promise you guys that that's it doesn't exist. Perfection isn't a thing. It's bullshit. It's just a way to not actually fully commit to things. And so when you commit to something, you're not committing to perfection. When you devote yourself to something, you're not committing to doing it perfectly or else it's bullshit. No, you're committing to the unfolding. You're committing to the growth, which is actually really messy and not linear. And then it unfolds and you continue to return back to your intention. Because when, for example, a relationship gets really hard, I mean, the first inclination might be to quit. But if what you desire is a sacred relationship or a sacred partnership, a conscious partnership, then you're going to have the self-awareness and the devotion to your union to keep coming back again and again. You both do. This isn't a one-way street, but trust me, the more that you embody these things, the more that you're going to attract that type of partner. And also that partner is going to mirror back your own devotion. They're going to want the things that you want too. So these connections ask more of us. And if we're not willing to be devoted before it shows up, or like I said, when it shows up, we forget that we're devoted to something deeper. Because I see these relationships, for me personally, they're like an act of service. You enjoy all the fun parts that are not like whatever serious. And, you know, I have this is my business, but then like I have a personal life. So I don't share a lot of my personal details because that's really sacred for me, right? I've learned from experience that keeping certain things sacred is really important. Keeping some privacy is important. And sharing from embodied experience, but not needing to like divulge every detail is also part of my practice now. But what I will say is that I see the relationship really as not just a personal fulfillment, but the type of conscious relationship that I'm talking about is an act of service to the planet, because you're learning to really embody unconditional love, not to just talk about it as a concept, but to actually become that. That's a big part of the Buddhist practice that I study too. Unconditional love as a concept, it sounds really good on paper. Practicing it takes devotion, because again, there's so many ways that our mind is going to come in, whether it is through something like perfectionism or, you know, judgment, criticism, blaming, projecting our stuff and not taking full ownership. These are all the ways that we like sabotage the intimacy that we really crave. And so in a relationship, like if you're not devoted to the union, which is like beyond your ego, the actual union of two people, it's so much bigger than your fear. It's so much bigger than, again, your egoic need to be right, or to never feel uncomfortable, or to never want to feel a little bit of like rejection, or I don't know, whatever it is, you know, the things that are insecurities, the stuff that's gonna really come up in these types of connections. Because I'm telling you right now, and I'm sure it's because the more that we mature, the more that we grow, the more self-aware we are, the less you're gonna be able to sweep stuff under the rug. When you try to like sweep it under the rug, it doesn't stay there very long. You know, in some relationships and in my past, and I'm talking like over a decade ago, I let a lot of things slide. I avoided difficult conversations. I didn't want to have conflict, or I swung to the opposite extreme and just got angry instead of actually taking a breath and being able to approach difficult things with like radical personal responsibility, which, by the way, completely changes conflict entirely, because we're not blaming, we're coming with a different energy and an open heart. You know, it's just an advanced spiritual practice, these types of relationships. And so my point in this video, and what I wanted to encapsulate this, is that when we have fears of commitment, you know, at the root of a fear of committing, like I said, a lot of times is perfectionism. Of like, if it's not perfect before I commit, then I'm afraid to commit fully to it. But there's more to fears of commitment. There's a fear of failure, right? I don't even consider failure like a thing. I don't see things as failing. Sometimes it feels like that because we've been conditioned this way. But like if you fall down or you feel like you fucked up, You just get back up again. You're learning, right? So this is not a straight line. Nobody gets it perfectly all the time. That's a myth. Again, that's a way to like get into self-loathing, and I'm not on board with that. It's pointless. Understand your patterns, get to the root of them, get clear about what's actually going on, and then you can treat it, You can go right in with like a tool or with love instead of self-criticism and trying to fix yourself like you're broken. But at the root of fear of commitment is also sometimes a fear of visibility, a fear of what's going to come up. Like, why didn't my spiritual teacher take vows for 10 years? He's like, I was terrified that I'd do them wrong, that I wouldn't do them perfectly, and I wouldn't be able to honor my commitment. And so I didn't make a commitment. But again, then you're shortchanging yourself because the thing that you want is on the other side of your full commitment. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like a catch-22. It's like a double-edged sword because people are afraid to commit, and yet the only way you're really going to get what you want is when you go all in. Like, you have to go first. And like I said, sometimes that means really starting to embody the things you desire in a relationship, like more integrity, like being devoted to love and choosing love when it's really, really hard. And what I mean by when it's hard is like when you're activated, when an insecurity arises, when it would be easier to blame someone or push somebody away or withdraw your love and try to control things or shut down your heart. Instead of doing that in that moment, you choose love. Let me just check the time. And that's a practice. And that's not something that came naturally to me in the past. That's something I had to really, every day, start to choose. But when it came to relationship, I realized over time, because I think a lot of us, you've experienced maybe a lot of false starts. It's like you say that you want this love, you want this conscious partnership, for example. And this goes for anything. I'm talking about relationship because that's my main thing, right? Like, that's what I love and that's what I teach. But I promise you guys, like, this goes for anything. I had a client that came in, a man came in for a session this week, and he was dealing with a work thing. And I was like, again, we have to fully choose what we want. We have to energetically be all in. And then the pieces will start to align. But there's like all this fear. I'll make the wrong choice. If I make this commitment, for example, but then I don't do it perfectly, I'm going to disappoint people. There can be like that people pleaser around, beneath a fear of commitment. If I commit to this one thing, it means I'm going to have to deal with other people being upset and sort of sit in their disappointment and be able to just somatically deal with it. Do you know what I mean? And not take it personally. So at the end of the day, and again, other reasons, other things underneath the fears of commitment might just be self-doubt or a fear of responsibility. Because why do I want to take vows, the Buddhist vows again? Bringing it back to that story really quickly. Because I know that for me, everything in my life that's come that I truly desired, and that was in my highest good, because it's got to be both. Everything that's come has been because I fully chose it before it came, And committing to something when it's not there yet can be tricky because your mind is going to come up with a lot of reasons why you shouldn't stay committed or you shouldn't stay devoted if you're not immediately getting the evidence that it's going to manifest. Or again, it might manifest in a way that's different than what you're thinking, and you might be so attached to it looking a certain way or coming in a certain way or in a certain time that your mind starts to play tricks on you. And then it's like, well, see, it's not happening. So then what's the point? But like I said, the reason why my number one pillar, my pillars in my business are deep intimacy, devotion number one, deep intimacy, and sacred union for a reason. These practices are like a slow burn. There are no quick fixes. This is not like fast work. You don't do it in a week. You don't even do it in 6 months. Most of my clients and the people that have been with me have been here for like 6, 7, 8 years because it takes time. It doesn't mean you're not going to have a transformation in a shorter period of time, because you will. I've had transformations with people in 5 weeks in an immersion. But the point is, it's not like a one-time thing. Devotion is like all in, period. And it's a lifestyle. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's why this isn't for everybody. It's for a select group of people that really feel in their heart. Like if sacred union or conscious relationship is something that really speaks to you, it's for a reason. But I promise you that devoting yourself fully to love And for me, that also looks like having a daily spiritual practice and staying consistent is essential. Like, I don't feel like you can have one really truly without the other, because I wouldn't be able, nor would any of my clients be able to navigate the trenches of what comes up in a conscious partnership, which is everything. Like every single fear, shadow, all the good stuff. And then on the flip side, all of the scary, shadowy shit that you don't want to look at is 100% guaranteed going to come up in these kinds of connections. The more self-aware you are and the more willing you are to choose love, the more you're going to be tested, and the more you're going to have to look at and integrate the parts of you that you reject within yourself, which are the parts that you project onto your partner as the things you don't like or the things that upset you. It's all coming from you. It's coming from your mind. It doesn't come this way, it comes this way. Buddhism 101. So that's what I wanted to say on this. I wanted to say that what you want is on the other side of your devotion. It's not perfection that's going to bring you the thing that you desire. It's devotion. It's when it's messy and when it's hard, you keep choosing love over and over and over. And again, it burns. It's also alchemy. You know, one of the core books that I use when I teach is the Magdalene Manuscript by Tom Kenyon. And this book is all about conscious relationship and union and love and divine love. And also like tantric union in a partnership. And in this book, he's like, conscious relationship and sacred partnership in this form is an alchemical container. It literally starts to transform and you start to transmute and transform the shadowy stuff, the dark parts. All of these things can get alchemized with the power of your devotion, with the power of your love. I'm going to end this live with a little story. I don't know if you guys have heard the story of Isis and Osiris, the myth in Egypt. Long story short, I won't get into the full story. It's a story about undying devotion and unconditional love. Essentially, Isis and Osiris were like brother and sister, but back then, whatever. In this myth, it was okay that they were also partners. And so Osiris, her brother, is murdered violently. And his body is cut up into like, I forget, 7 pieces, something like that. Multiple pieces. His body's chopped, sent down the Nile River in all these, disembodied parts. And Isis, through the power of her love, through the power of her devotion, is able to bring back all his parts, right? We could consider these the ways that we, what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you try to compartmentalize yourself or whatever, you're like, I want to say fractals, but anyways, doesn't matter. She gathered all his pieces and brought him back together again. She brought him back to life after death through the power of her love, just long enough to have a child, Horus, which becomes like the Trinity, right? Of like the masculine, the feminine, and universal energy, or the divine. Just long enough, she brings him back to life, just long enough to have this child, this like holy baby. And the myth really is that without the power of her love, without the power of her like deepest devotion, she never would have been able to bring him back to life. There's way more to it. I'm just giving you guys like the Cliff Notes version. And we can really think about this when it comes to sacred partnership, because again, like I said in the beginning, these relationships are like you, the person, and spirit, the divine, universe, source, God. And if you can't surrender to source or to spirit, then you're never going to be able to surrender to your partner or surrender to love, which is why for me, a spiritual practice is essential. Because if I hadn't developed over many years, before there was even the possibility to be physically in this type of relationship, if I hadn't had a spiritual practice where I got out of my own way and connected with the divine every day. Now I do it every day. I didn't back then, but I was trying, you know what I mean? And when you start your practice, it's not going to look perfect. It can be literally 60 seconds a day where you sit down and breathe. And that's it. You've got to build a habit. You know what I'm saying? You got to build consistency over time. It doesn't happen overnight. You're going to fall down. You're going to get back up again. A lot of people shared with me in the calls this past week that they were like really wanting to join one of my containers, like Rose Temple, which is a year commitment. And the reason why I don't have a lot of ways to work with me that are short is because this work is not quick. And so you've got to be committed because it's hard. If it were easy, everybody would be doing it. If it was easy, everyone would have the union that we're talking about, or the type of conscious partnership that I'm talking about. If it were easy. If it were mainstream, everybody would be doing it. But right now, that's not the case, right? Maybe one day it will be. I hope so. It would be a very different world if it were the case. But a lot of us are kind of paving the way. We're creating a new template to be in relationship. And this template looks extremely different from what you learned and from what the people in your family are probably doing. And not to say that your parents or the people in your family don't love each other, but I promise you this is something different. And so to do things differently, we've got to be devoted to love on a really deep level. And the only way you're going to do this is if you know in the fucking pits of your spirit and soul that this is what's meant for you. And you will know that. If you're on my page, it is. Let's just be real. It definitely is. But choosing it is different. Wanting it is one thing, but actually choosing this path and going all in, probably before you meet this person or before you have a relationship, and understanding that the foundation of these partnerships and of union is your inner union, the union that you create within yourself, within the principles of your own being, your own energy, and also the union that you have with spirit. That is what magnetizes this type of relationship into your life. It's not the other way around, I promise. You're not just gonna, you might find them on a dating app or something. I don't know. I'm not judging how you meet people. It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is it doesn't happen from the outside in, it happens from the inside out. And so the reason why I don't have a lot of short-term containers is because I need women that are all in, even if it looks like messy. Sometimes it looks like a hot mess, you guys. Sometimes it's like really uncomfortable and you have to just be with your stuff. But if you think that it's not easy alone, imagine when you're with another person who mirrors everything back to you. And it's also like it's like you read each other's mind and energy. So it's like nothing can stay hidden. I'm speaking from experience. Nothing stays hidden. Everything's going to come out. And so over time, you get more comfortable with the shadowy things coming to the surface. And when your insecurities are triggered, you're not going to have a total meltdown. You're not going to sabotage your relationship every time you feel insecure. Right? And deep intimacy is not just like touching each other and having sex. Deep intimacy are like deep nuanced layers and levels of emotional and physical and spiritual and energetic connection that you develop through your own practice, which is why my programs are about self-intimacy. Of course, I teach relationship stuff too, but the core of everything is you and the relationship that you have with yourself and the spiritual relationship that you create through your own daily practice. All that's going to be the bricks to the house. The house is your union, for example, or the family that you want to create. And you're not going to build a strong union and a new template of conscious relationship on sand. You're not building it on little fucking Legos that are broken, right? You're going to build it on bricks. You're going to create a super strong foundation. And from there, you can build something really beautiful. So I'm going to end it here because I have to hop off and get on a class soon, but I just want to share that with you guys. This feels very important. I know that it's scary and it can feel really confronting to devote yourself fully to something before it's there, and to stay in your devotion and to commit yourself and fully stay committed when it gets hard, when it gets unclear, when you're in the void, when all the stuff comes creeping in that's going to tell you to quit. But if I can tell you one thing, and those of you that are here from YouTube that are still around, you already know. There's no such thing as quitting this path. It's your soul's path. So you're going to get pulled back again and again. And if you have like a partner or this type of relationship and maybe, it's been a long journey for you, you'll laugh about it later and be like, LOL, remember when we thought we were going to escape one another, or this wasn't, you can try everything, but some things are just meant to be, and some things are just meant to be, developed. Some things are meant to blossom. You can run, but you can't hide. If it's meant for you, it'll keep coming around. You'll be nudged and pushed back onto this path again and again and again. And it's for a reason. I understand that your ego might fight it. Your logic might tell you that it's bullshit. What are you doing? Why are you trying? What are you doing? But again, remember, it's not even the relationship that you want. My teacher tells me all the time, any desire that we have, this is very Buddhist philosophy, but it's like any desire that we have is actually a desire to become enlightened. But if right now it's taking the form of a relationship, because people think like, oh, the partner's going to make me eternally happy, or the marriage, or the house, or the job title, or the 6 or 7 figure business, or whatever it is, the perfect abs, a perky ass. That's going to make me happy. And it will temporarily bring you some happiness, but it won't last because life is suffering so long as we're in earth school. So then we have to learn how to relieve ourselves of unnecessary suffering by transforming our minds. So the thing you really want is to become free, like in your mind. But I think a relationship is a beautiful path to become enlightened also, because there's no faster way to wake up than when someone is standing in front of you, mirroring all of your shit back to you, and all the good stuff, but also all the shitty stuff all the time. It's the quickest, it's a very accelerated spiritual path, this type of relationship, which is why it's amazing and it's why it's hard, which is why you need to practice, and which is why mentorship is so helpful. That's why I have mentors, you guys. I always have, on some level, because you don't have to do it all alone, and accountability can be really potent, especially when you have a big ask and there's a fear to fully commit to it. I had to fully commit to this path before things started to show up or reappear, shall I say, in the physical. I'll just leave it at that. If you guys want to work together, these are the ways that you can do it. Right now, I've got a freebie, the Sensual Embodiment series, which will give you like a taste of some of what we do inside the longer group containers. So that's a free series with 2 practices. You can start with that. I have Return to Venus, which is a 5-week self-study. It's all about feminine embodiment, feminine energetics, the yin energy, slowing down. This is really good if you have no concept of like meditation or embodiment practice at all, and you haven't really done it, and you tend to be in your head and kind of like burned out and overdoing it. That course is, again, what is Venus? Venus is like the ultimate highest feminine principle. It's like the goddess energy. So it's you really like immersing yourself in that vibe and in those types of practices for 5 weeks. And that's an amazing prep for Rose Temple. And Rose Temple is like my signature program. It's a year long. And I'm opening the doors back up in the spring. So I will be opening the waitlist to Rose Temple. It's in its 3rd year. I'm just closing out the 2nd year this month. So we'll be moving into year 3. It keeps evolving. And the waitlist will be open soon. So if you're interested in working together, these are some ways that you can get started. You can always book a one-to-one also and talk to me for 90 minutes, and we can always get a deeper, look into where you're at, what your goals are, what your desires are, and I can also guide you from there. So yeah, if you're interested, Rose Temple, like I said, the waitlist will be opening soon. I don't have the link yet. I mean, if you're super interested, you can always DM me. I'll put you manually on the waitlist, but just keep your eyes peeled, because that will happen, and then we'll start in the spring, and it will run for a year. And what else? That's it. Yeah, and I have one-to-one. So if you're interested, everything's in my links. But that's kind of like the intimacy journey. You can start with the freebie, move to Return to Venus, maybe come into Rose Temple, especially if you've been on the fence. If you're one of these people that I'm speaking to in this video and you've got a fear of committing, but you know that this is your path, I'm just inviting you to go all in. If it looks like working with me for a time, great. If it looks like working with someone else but fully choosing it, I'm deeply encouraging you to take that next step. What you want is on the other side of going all in. We don't get it with 1 foot out the door. We don't. You can try, but it's not going to work. Just like if you're coming into union, for example, physically, and it's just starting to happen, and you're like afraid to fully commit to it, because then you're like, holy shit, the thing I really, really, really want is here now. Part of you is going to want to fuck it up. Part of you is going to want to sabotage it. You might not want to fully devote yourself because you're going to get scared. Things come up. It's natural. Even me, I've been doing this a long time, and I still have fears and stuff that, fears creep in around relationship stuff. It happens. But my point is, in that moment, you can't half-ass it. Do you know what I'm saying? In that moment, you're really being called to fully devote yourself as well. So, but I can help you prepare. All right, love you guys. I'm going to X out of here. If you have any questions, just send me a DM. Otherwise, mwah. Talk to you soon.